Hello, Peter.
Hi, hello. You got in there first this time. Mike, we've kind of almost got up to now, which is a pretty spectacular journey. I mean, we've traveled across 80 something years, not miles, a lot more miles than that. And we've talked in the last section. We talked about working in drama schools and working with Jane on
Armfield.
Arnfield
Armfield.
on two productions that you kind of slipped into and then found immense kind of joy and value in, and they obviously were massively, joyful activities to do. Anyway, um, so we're kind of almost up to date now, and we're both doing these interviews on Zoom because we are not mingling, because if anybody who's watching this from 2050, we are in the middle of what's called a pandemic. And, and most of our communication with other human beings, apart from possibly, the odd person who comes to your door, um, is done in this way through Zoom. And our technology isn't always brilliant, and our sound isn't always great. And I noticed in our last talk that you froze for about 3 or 4 seconds, and I think people just have to accept that nowadays. So, you've come here, and you are now sort of in you're up to date. Tell us about what it's been like for you in the last year or so.
Okay. Well, for the last couple of years, even more now, I've been working on devising a piece. I was invited by a company called the Visible Theatre Company, which was set up to give older actors work and also to explore themes connected with later life, not necessarily being old, but later life in all its permutations. And they'd already done two productions, one of which was really lovely. It was a survey of the 20th century from a group of elderly actors with their memories and their parents' memories, and it was very lovely. And then they did a modern adaptation of La Ronde, the Schnitzler play, sort of for sex for people in their late life and so forth. And then Sonia, who runs the company, approached me because I'd done some workshops with them and so forth, and said, "Would you be interested in working with me on a piece about sleep?" And I said, "Oh yes, why not? That'd be very interesting. We spend a third of our life doing it." And she had obviously a lot of trouble with sleep, and she tried all sorts of things. And we met and we talked about it, and she sent me all sorts of information. And there was a little rash of stuff coming out in all different media about sleep and sleep deprivation and how important it was and how profound and how long you needed or you didn't need and so forth. And I said, well, look, sleep itself is not interesting. It's not very dramatic. It's when you can't sleep that it's interesting, or the dreams, but then other people's dreams are the most boring thing in the world, you know. And I was very preoccupied myself with the fact that I was, I guess, 83, 84 when we started talking about, and thinking, what is it that motivates people to keep going? Now, I'll describe this in more detail for people who don't know about acting technology in another, piece, another video. There's something in acting called the super objective. You try to define what the overarching drive of a character that moves them through their lives. It's often subconscious, and it's a very large sort of thing, like to be loved, to be a good person, to avoid life's hardships, to be a success, you know, to, to explore life to its fullest, something like that. And I believe we all have them, because otherwise, why do we make the decisions we do when we make them? Well, there's an overriding something inside us which just, you know, for us. And I was very curious for myself, what is my objective, my super objective as I'm getting older? Because, you know, your super objectives, they're really about how do I want to live my life, but they're also about looking into the future. And of course, as you're getting older, the horizon is getting closer and your past is vast. It's getting bigger and bigger. And you tend to be very retrospective in a lot of your thinking. And I was thinking, what is it that keeps people going? You know, what are their super objectives? You know, and I thought that would be a very, and together with that, I know that I sleep on the whole pretty well, but there are times, particularly at this age, at my age, when I wake up early and then all sorts of anxieties rev up, you know, quite distressingly. You know, supposing I suddenly get ill, who will look after me? Supposing there's a leak, will I be able to find a plumber? It's this, I think it's the sensation of being, feeling as you get older, whether it's culturally indoctrinated or whether it's a natural thing, you're feeling more vulnerable. So things I would never worry about, you know, 20 years, even 10 years ago, 20 years ago, for certain, you know, and you lie awake with these things churning around. And of course, that those hours in the morning, your blood sugar is very low and your energy is very low. So it's not a great time to cope with stuff. So I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to create through some actors, some characters who are hitting this part of their lives and explore what their super objectives are and what keeps them alive. And Sonia liked the idea. And so we set up over the years about 3 or 4 workshops at least. And we invited actors and we started to explore things. And then it was a long and very nice process. And we'd do a week workshop or 2-week workshop, and we'd ask the actors to create characters with certain stipulations that they couldn't sleep and why couldn't they sleep and so forth. And out of this very long process, we devised 5 very good stories. I like, you know, actors we really liked. And for various reasons, the originators of some of those stories didn't want to go on with the project. I think in many cases it's because they'd hit things in themselves they actually didn't want to deal with. They weren't autobiographical, but obviously the characters that the actors had created had a lot of them in it. And for whatever reasons, we had to keep recasting. And we'd finally got to the state we were actually going to do a production of it. We'd got a designer. We were going to open at the Southwark Playhouse in May. And on the first day of rehearsal, which was the 16th of March, we were told that, you know, in the following week, we were going to go into lockdown. And so we thought, shall we keep rehearsing just in case not? And then one of the actors who was meant to be in it had a bad cough, and they'd stopped testing people at this point. They said, there's no point, you know, this wonderful government. There's no, and so we hummed and hawed, we got the rehearsal space, everything was set up, and we decided not to. And so this production is hanging there waiting if and when. We would like to go on with it, you know, and we'd already done some preliminary rehearsals, just pre-rehearsal rehearsals with our actual cast, talking about things, trying out techniques. Lovely group of actors. I think one was doing their original role. I think the other 4 were all creating for the first time, you know. So there we are. And so I entered lockdown thinking, damn, well, maybe the autumn, maybe next spring, you know, we didn't know, you know, it was very naive in a way, you know, we'll hope the lockdown works and, you know, trust. And then quite by chance, and this would have never occurred to me because I'm not, it's not that I hate technology, but I'm very nervous of things now that I don't understand. And I was meant to be doing a workshop in Berlin in June. And the man who ran the workshop was saying, I wonder if you'll be free. I wonder if we'll be free in June. Should we keep it running? And then he decided not. And he said, what about doing some online? Why don't we do some workshops online on Zoom? And it would never have occurred to me. And I sort of swallowed, thinking, oh, technology, and I thought, okay. And it's been fabulous. I surprised myself. Within its obvious limitations, I enjoy the medium very much. I've done a big range of workshops, running a week, 4 days, 2 weeks, and I've dealt with people from all over the world because of it, which is wonderful, so it's been like another little, a pathway in my career, another, extraordinary, which I wasn't expecting at all. I had planned, I thought, I know what I'll use a lockdown for. I'll go through all my old production files, which are shoved away in envelopes, go through them, sort them out, throw out the rubbish, organize them, and get all that, my archive, in good shape. Well, I didn't have time because I was so busy setting up and doing stuff. And so really they're in two strands. I do workshops which are in play analysis. And I also use plays which I know very well and for which I've got my own translations. So I've done 3 Chekhovs and The Blood Wedding by Lorca and Schnitzler's Roland. And there's a Ghost as well by Ibsen. And so I asked the people who are going to participate to do a lot of preparation, and I do a huge amount of preparation. And it's a 6 2-hour sessions over a week or scattered over 2 weeks. And I get the actors to be very analytical. The whole point is to look at the script and to see what's there, not what you'd like to be there, not what you think ought to be there, but to see what, as far as you can tell factually, what the playwright or the writer has written. And so the structure of the play, the spaces he has designed, the number of scenes, the time span, how many people there are in, the sort of journeys of the people in a very crude way through the play and so forth. And then then another session on character, going through my character lists, which we'll talk about. And we do this for 4 days. And then the last 2 plays are starting with all this information, factual and reasonably conjectured information. I say, okay, now let's talk about what the production would look like. What would it look like on the stage? What sort of set? Would you want a realistic set? Would you want a very stylized set? How would it be stylized? What are the colors you see? Would you want to modernize it? What are the actors going to wear? What sort of production would it be? And we have no idea. And you let everybody pool their ideas, and you say that seems more reasonable, this and so forth. And then the last one was, how are the actors going to work in it? At what level of reality are they going to perform? Are they going to be very heightened? Because I'm very not obsessed, but deeply absorbed with playing plays in different heightened states and still being utterly truthful. Like you do Shakespeare. They're not talking the way we talk, but there's a truth, and the actors have to talk with a truth, and so I believe them. Not that I hear them saying lines and giving readings and so forth. And I found that very exciting. So you start with naturalism, which is the closest to reality, to actuality one could get. And then you're moving outwards in different ways, saying, for this, they need to have higher energy, or they need more space, or these characters talk far more than we do in life and make big speeches. What does that mean? It's operatic and so forth and so on. So that was one strand of the workshops I did on Zoom. The other was saying, now, can I do any practical physical ones with everybody tucked away in their own homes, with limited space and no possibility of making any serious contact. And I've done one on Laban efforts, which I like very much. And I did one of taking, and I've done them on taking people through my rehearsal technique, you know, talking about it and making them learn small, tiny scenes, which we apply the techniques to. And I've done one where we did the interpretive analytical process, and then we did the rehearsal process on the play we'd analyzed. And that was very nice. And it's kept me very busy, and I've been working through this very lovely Matthias Schott acting studio in Berlin, and from the 16th Street studio in Melbourne, where I had a very nice connection because I worked there recently. And through them, we've created a lot of workshops, and for other companies as well, an English company called Living Theatre. I've done a bit of work for Welsh College Opera director training students. So and I'm enjoying it, and it made me have to think more clearly about what I was teaching, particularly the analytical stuff, you know, and I've had to type up pages of analysis and so forth, and go to my old notes and make sense of them and revisit everything. And so it's been very stimulating. And Peter, I guess what I wanted to say out of this, what it's done, and maybe it's the nature of being locked down where you do become more reflective if you are in a position and, you know, you have the privilege of not having to worry about your children and money and so forth, that you become very reflective about yourself and your life. And I've suddenly, well, yes, fairly suddenly started to have rather deeper thoughts about acting. It's not that I've changed my mind, but it's gone further. And that's been incredibly enriching. And it really is what's leading me towards, I hope, being able to write a third book, because I've suddenly seen acting in a much deeper and broader and more profound way. And I suppose, to give you a little teaser, it's about saying that most actors don't realize the profundity or the depths of this profession they've chosen for themselves, you know. Mm. And what clicked it into place was watching a video of a dance company, Nederland Dans Theater. And there's a friend of mine who sort of worked for the theatre as well, and he was always sending little clips. And I love dancing. I love modern dance. I think it's, you know, when it's free, it's wonderful. And I watched these two clips, this Nederland Dance Theater, and the dancers were so present, and they were so immediate, and they were witty, and they could dance in any style. They could do, you know, classical ballet. They could do street stuff. They could do Martha Graham. And the choreography was witty, and it was playful and beautiful and accurate and specific, and they had so much technique. And I suddenly thought, I rarely, if ever, see an actor come into rehearsal saying, here I am, ready to work. Now, of course, the nature of dancing means that you have to have that physical presence, otherwise you can't even do a class and you won't even get work. But actors can come in and bring their bodies in and say, oh, I feel my character is like, you can get very self-indulgent. And they're never really there. They're never in their bodies. And so therefore they're not in touch with themselves deeply. And that's the whole exploration I'm going into now. And it's, you know, it's about the technique of being an actor. But it's been wonderfully stimulating. And I suppose the thing to say about it is that when other bits of me are, you know, declining or, you know, wearing out, you know, walking and, you know, all these things, I do everything still, but more and more cautiously. Intellectually, I've become more alive. And I read somewhere, I can't think, Julian Barnes wrote a book about dying or death. I think it's called Don't Be Frightened, or it's all right, or something like that. I'm misquoting him. And he says that the brain actually develops as your intellectual brain gets stronger as you get older. And I feel that very much, because when I listen to current affairs, I listen to politicians, I sort of feel I can cut through the shit and cut through the cackle and think, what are you talking about? Yeah, that was a non sequitur. You didn't answer the question. You're wandering off. You're not, and feel very alert and very bright about it, and of course deeply frustrated, because you want to sort of interrupt and say, listen to me, so that's where we are at this stage, so I'm still doing my Zoom classes. I'm making notes for a play and for a book, and if and when we come out of this and people can make contact reasonably and theatres can become reasonably viable, I hope we'll go back to our sleep play, which is called 5 Characters in Search of a Good Night's Sleep.
Okay, Mike.
Voila.
We've got, this is not the end, because we do have a whole load of stuff that we are going to deal with over the next month or two, starting with possibly a chat, which we won't do today, a chat about the work that you did abroad and how interesting and different that was, and the cultural differences that you've talked about sort of off camera. And then we're going to do quite a lot of work on the actual techniques that you use, because I think a lot of people will be very interested in seeing the way in which you approach stuff. One of the things that I want to say just in closing is, it's always been very interesting all the way through these discussions to see the kind of respect that you show towards actors. 90% of the time, I mean, I know you are critical, and you were just a minute ago about saying actors come in and they're kind of flopping around and everything. But actually, most of the time when you've talked about the work that you've done with actors, you've talked about them with immense respect. And I think that's kind of really important.
Peter, remind me that in all this stuff about technique and so forth, there should be a little place about ethics, about ethical behavior as a director in a rehearsal room.
Yeah.
I think that is a subject, and it's terribly important.
Okay.
I was never taught anything about it. I never thought about it. And over the years, I've learned to observe and, yes, of course you treat actors with respect, because they are giving themselves to you in a very vulnerable situation where you're making huge demands. Anyway, we'll talk about all that, but that's a little topic of itself as well, which is very, and again, it ties into, the third book. It's something about the nature of being human beings, which is very profound. Mm. So maybe the whole thing will come together into some sort of nice little, package with a bow tied on top. I don't know.
Well, we'll see. All right, Mike, thank you so much.
Okay. No, thank you, Peter. Thank you for your patience and your industry. Give out to Sally. Enjoy meeting your stepchildren. Do they give you respect? I hope they do.
Well, we'll see. Okay, and we can let's turn our recordings off now. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that chat. And if you did, would you press the like button and also the subscribe button? That would be great. And if you wanted to be given alerts to when the next one is happening, just press the bell button. If you want to put any comments or any questions underneath here, underneath the video, please do. And at some point I will re-interview Mike, as it were, and put some of these questions to him. So I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.